I know the name. There was a conductor on Southern Air.
Gibson?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and Jimmy Dees was a conductor. He was seniority. I think he went to work about. He went to work for the. Yeah, I knew him as a kid growing up. Look at this.
Well, so they got to get the old timers. Jack Farley, Bud Scott, Earl, and Don, right?
You got the mic on, Will?
Yeah, I got the mic on. Just
Well, I know you
yell at us.
You forget things, Will.
I don't forget you.
I'm not one to forget anything.
No, I know.
I never forget.
Okay.
See, this goes on all the time.
Yeah, you didn't blow the whistle when she was born. Things change. Yeah. Still hanging around the same country.
I got a picture of that.
Get good, Bill.
At least I didn't go to Billy Pete. Oh, yeah, I love Billy Pete. All the way down. Okay, all right. Now, guys like me gotta go to 68. If we take it too early, then we can take it.
The sign-in table.
Yeah. Oh, how are you? Hey, Moose. That's right, we did tap guys together. There's Lisa took it over. And how the heck are you? Didn't gain any weight, are you ready? A couple pounds? What are you doing now?
What do you got? You got the Jack Daniels there? Okay, good. I'll have some a little later.
Yeah, I know they were. They were just starting, but Kansas City was behind.
On the engines, like on 4th of July, they always have good-looking girls around. Up in the cab, They still working out of Market Street? Market Street? They got off. Cutting a lot of
Where'd George go?
Down there.
He's down over there? Okay. I'll get him on camera. I want to get him on camera.
It's still raining, Dorothy.
I'm sorry, but I'm a stranger to actually I used to live and work up in this country.
Boy, you're getting it all, Willis.
I'm trying to get. I still got it.
Well, so far it's been very, very good. A lot of side roads.
You found the sign.
Oh, yeah.
That'll help.
Yeah, I mean, I see that they say Willis and Petaluma.
All right, these are the last two engineers, right?
Yeah, that's Paul Schmidt on the right. He was the engineer.
Keep talking.
And the left was the conductor, Jerry Howard. They're both NWPers. And the brakeman was out of Oakland.
Good. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Here, just a minute. All right, I'll hold one more.
Thanks, Beth.
Put this in there. You got him? Yeah, got him, yeah. Okay, we got a foreigner there in the background, you know, from the SP. That's Stan Horn. Okay, this is the side of the engine. Stan wanted to know when you retired. No, Stan Horn was born? No, Stan and I went to school together. Okay, we got it all for sure. Good, that's good.
Okay, welcome to our first annual Northwestern Pacific reunion. We have a small program for you here, but before we do, even though Bill said he'd kill me if I did, this whole reunion, including the mailing, the phone calls, the catering service, Bill Bish organized. And what we're going to do a little later on, next few minutes, we'll have.
We're doing a little louder, Joe.
Yeah. How about now? Better? Okay, we've got a list of nicknames. Most rails have always had nicknames. Bailey Cooksey got the list on most of them, so we'll blame Bailey for it later. A very good friend of mine, who is also one of the nicknames here, Punchy Harris, if you remember Punchy, once told me that everybody has to have a nickname. Makes them feel wanted. But you just can't give a nickname. You have to earn them. Now, I went through this list. That Bailey gave me, and I'm going to skip a few. Anyways. And then what we'd also like to do after we get through here, just like to have some of you come up and recite some of the memories. And remember, there is children here. One of the things I remember, just off the top of my head because it started raining, I can remember working work trains with Big Bias and his crew working 24 hours, 25 hours a day without any rest, cleaning the railroad, cleaning the track so we could keep on working. One of mine, but anyway, later on we'll start talking other things. The nicknames that we have a list, and they'll be up on your nameplate tag, so you can get those. Bill, you wanted me to mention the last NWP train out of. Okay, so that's up there, huh? And Bill also wants me to mention that over in the depot, there is a TV going, I think it's about 15, 13, 14 minutes long, and it's the flood. The film is Morris and Knudsen, and it's the flood in 64 and 65. So we can wander around and we can look that over. Okay, time for the nickname. And I see Mark, and I'll scratch Mark's off right now. Antelope. Who remembers the antelope?
Yeah, there is.
Well,
Where is he? Deucey. Where's he at?
Deucey, he didn't show.
Down there, ain't it?
The albino. Can you, I think there was something else on it. Albino.
Tittleson. Jerry Tittleson.
Tittleson. All right, here's some of the old Babe. Babe Williams? Okay. Bark and Snort. Okay. Boom Boom. I don't remember Boom Boom. That could be any engineer. Every joint I ever made. Brittlebone. Yeah, okay, yeah, McCutcheon, John McCutcheon. No, McCutcheon was broken back. Yeah, probably the guy that broke. Canoe shoes. And Bob, I did make this list. Captain Midnight.
That's old Frank Hansen.
Frank Hansen. Okay. Chippy. I remember that one. Chippy Carter. Yeah. Okay. Coke bottle. Don Young.
God's gonna get you for this.
Now here's another one. Chrome Dome. Hey. Would that be Peterson? How about Cloud 9?
I know who that is.
Okay, now we have Spider. he could climb boxcars up and down. Remember, Joppus used to do it upside down. Oh, let's see. Cloud 9, that was Kogan, I suppose, huh? Day and Night. Who was Day and Night? Was that Frank Hansen, or was he Midnight?
Paul Bandy.
Bandy? Paul Bandy, okay. Deadwood. Norwood Hutchins. They treated us with respect. So they were always called Mr. Ballard, Mr. Campbell, Mr. Parrott, and Miss Weber. With Miss Weber, it was always Miss Weber. Never Mabel, but always Miss Weber. So again, copies of this is, if you want it, is up there next to Bill.
No, Brent Parrott died last week.
I beg pardon?
Brent Parrott died last week.
Oh, he did. I just found out about Corky. Yeah. Nice man. Nice man. Okay. If some people anybody have some amusing things that they want, everybody but Seaman, you stay there, Stan. And I think Bailey has a couple things he wants to discuss, and George Jacinko wanted to give us something about motor cars or something that was coming in. So, Bailey, you want to come up here and? He's the oldest member, and I we're all so young. I don't really know how to start that. And who came the furthest? And I would say Don Burns came from Alaska down here. To be insulted, I might add. Okay, Bailey.
Well, I had volunteered for this, but I'm kind of having cold feet right now. But can everybody hear okay? Can you hear okay? Okay. I started my railroad career July the 9th, 1950. I had an interview with Mr. Ray Hulbert, trainmaster. And he was on the telephone talking to somebody in San Rafael about a caboose, a boxcar caboose that Conductor Tuxton was using at South Fork, and he had given him a ride in it, and he was had gotten sick, car sick from it, and he was demanding that somebody do something about that, give him a decent caboose. But I remember the name Conductor Tuxton, and then finally he got around to talking to me. I'd come up from the valley around Turlock, and I wanted to be a brakeman. I'd been working for the PG&E, and that wasn't great, so I gave him my letter of recommendation, and I told him who I was, and he said, yeah. He says, I'll hire you. He says, there's some turkey pickers from Turlock here. He says, I kind of like them, and he says, they're dumb, they're from the farm, and we can teach them something. He said, these boomers, he says, they know it all, and they couldn't get over a derail. I didn't know what that meant, but anyway, he was willing to train his own students, so he gave me a job. He says, see, Miss Weber, go down and get Doc Walsh to look at your back. And then he says, show up in the morning, Tuesday morning, and he was going to put me on a day job. That's the only one we had. But I found out later that day job only started in the day. But anyway, I got down there got my lantern. Mr. Weber gave me a lantern and 2 keys, a book of rules, a safety book, and I was all set. Rolled out the carpet for me. So Tuesday morning I came down a little bit late, I think, but the crew was in the trainment shack and they were going over some switch lifts, and a lot of cussing going on in there, because I heard that cars on every track in the yard. I heard that a balloon was plugged. They couldn't get a crummy out. I didn't know what that meant, but I soon found out. Well, we couldn't do anything till number 4 came in, and I didn't know what number 4 was, but I found out later that was a passenger train. So we all got out there in front of the depot, and we waited for number 4. Well, I could hear a whistle blowing way down the track there, and it just kept getting louder, and I thought, well, that's the passenger train coming in, number 4. Well, then I saw it. It was come right in sight there from down below, and the steam was a white steam out of the stack. The bell was ringing, a whistle blowing, and the engine working, steam. I thought, man, this is about the most beautiful sight I'd ever seen. Well, we watched it come in there, and I thought he was going to go right on past the station, but he made a perfect stop right there in front of the station. We were watching Earl Wallen come in. Earl Wallen was the engineer, and nobody could do it better. But anyway, we got to switching after a while. They told me to get in the engine and stay there. Don't get out under no circumstances. So that was all right. I wanted to see what was going on. But every time I'd look out, the engineer would tell me to get down on the steps or sit on the sandbox. So I finally wound up on the sandbox. I didn't want to be out there, you know, hanging onto that engine. It scared me. Well, anyway, we went back and forth there for a while and got a hold of some cars. I don't even know what happened, and then pretty soon we pulled clear down Main First Street, way down there. And I got a first-hand view of that area. I thought, what a heck of a place to put a rail yard. But anyway, I was counting the bars through there. First we got the Fox's Den, and then there was a fan club, and then the old Victory Club, and on the other side of the tracks was Bruno Gusto. Everywhere you looked, there was a bar.
What was upstairs, David?
But anyway, what happened was we'd gotten hold of that passenger train and set it someplace, and then we went around and we pushed. I found that was a balloon. Got a hold of it, and we took off. I thought we were going to Arcata, but finally they stopped, and they got to switching back and forth down there. And when it was all over, they showed back in there. By golly, they had that passenger train all turned around heading south, heading west, and they had hold of a caboose. And I thought, man, these guys are geniuses, you know. But anyway, we got a train made up of about 20 cars, and we headed for Arcata, and got there and cut the engine off, and the engineer says we got to give old Bitsy a drink. I didn't know what that meant either, but I soon found out. We had to fill that thing up with water, and it took about 10,000 gallons. But on the way down there, well, we had this little fireman, and it had a polka dot hat on. And you know who I'm talking about. All at once he stood up and hollered, "Whoa, whoa!" And so we stopped, and I thought, well, that's okay. That's the way you stopped horses, so you don't have to stop an engine that way. But we'd run over a Jeep. We'd hit a Jeep, brand new Jeep. Tore the front end right off of it. And I looked out there, and there was this Jeep, and they had Humboldt crab on the side of it. I thought, man, we hit a fish peddler. I found out later it was raffling off a Jeep for the baseball team. The cops came, and somebody said, who won the Jeep? And somebody else says the NWP. Well, you know, it was starting to get pretty late in the day, and we went around somewhere around the Y there, and coming out, we got that pony trucks on that engine on the ground. Well, they got a crew over there. In a couple hours, we were back in business, and getting pretty dark then. And I thought, well, gosh, we're going to go home pretty soon or something like that. But anyway, we finally got back after another train arrived. We got back about midnight, 16 hours. That's what it was. That was my first day on the railroad. And I wasn't sure that I wanted to stay there either. Now about 28 years later, I came to work on the Carlotta Local, and there were a caboose and 6 flat cars and a boxcar and a big diesel engine sitting there waiting for us. This was Saturday night, and I thought, man, this is going to be a breeze tonight, you know. Run down and put 6 cars in the storm and take the boxcar over to Glen and head for home. Well, in the meantime, all this time I'd gotten acquainted with this little fireman, and he had told me all about the engines, and we got to talking about our services overseas, and he was a tank driver. Said he run the point tank for General Patton across to Europe. Well, that sounded like a pretty good fairy tale to me. But I told him, well, I was over there, and I worked on a bridge over there on the Rhine, and well, he says, that's where I crossed. He says, I crossed there at Koblenz. I was the first tank driver across here. And he said, I had the most dangerous job in the whole Army. And he said, I tried to get out of it, but the commanding officer told me that I was the only one crazy enough to handle that job. So he was a tank driver, and later on he ran a diesel engine quite a bit like a tank, so when he could get away with it. And one of his tricks was to widen out on that engine if it was a light engine, and when he got everybody's attention, he would shut it off, and then he would stand up and say, "Let her roll." He was still living the old steam engine days, I guess. But this is a story about him. We looked at the register, and we had the Red Baron for a conductor. We had the dynamo. That's the energy in motion, boy, and it really fit his name. And so we took out, there was AD, I'm going to call Al AD because he called me BC. And then we'd always laugh and say, we really go back a long ways, don't we? Anyway, we got over there to the old river, and we shoved those flats in there, and the Red Baron had told us, he says, when you come out of there with that box, just keep going. And he says, leave the caboose here. Well, that's what we did. I told Ewart to stay there, I only need one man, and I'm glad I did, because I spared him the result of what happened. We got over to Glen, and we set that boxcar out, and then coming back, right after we got past the dragger under that bridge, well, it was showtime. The little dynamo had opened up that throttle just wide open. And we took off, back to Glen, and I knew what was going to happen. At least I thought I did, but it didn't happen that way. He didn't shut the throttle off. He just kept going, and that engine just kept revving up, man, RPMs you can't believe. And so I thought, well, we're not going to make it around this curve, Manning could, but he was breaking it with the independent. And he got her slowed down enough to get around that curve, and then he just kicked the brakes off again. Well, I knew that there never had been anything more than 25 miles an hour around that track, so I got kind of worried, and I went over there, and I held on, and I peeked around the control panel, and they were going 55 miles an hour. And there was a little dynamo. He was bent over there. He looked like he was looking through one of these peepholes through his tank, and he had his hand back on the throttle. The brake, it wasn't the throttle, it was the brake. And he was going across Germany again. I'm sure he was doing that. I didn't look at the speedometer anymore. I didn't have enough nerve. And I thought, well, AD there, he's going to pull the air on him, but he didn't. I looked at him, he was just transfixed. He was just frozen. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? Push the kill button. No, I can't do that. The engine dies and no brakes. And we were getting right along there too, and finally I went over there and I shook him and I said, hey, we got our caboose on the main line. And then he kind of raised up, and he looked over there and he shut the throttle off and started braking. And they made a perfect joint on that caboose. And I thought, man, thank you, Lord, I'll live another day.
Billy, you got a pretty good memory. George.
Yeah, okay, my memory's not that good probably, so I'm going to tell you about something that happened yesterday. I was there at the house, and I heard this motor car going down the track, and I said, gee, well, range I haven't... What's that? A little louder. Okay, I'm always told it's make too loud. Anyway, I heard this motor car going by, and I thought, what's going on down there? Nothing runs on Eureka Southern or California Northern, whatever it is anymore. So I look out the window, and there goes this motor car by, and pretty soon there's another motor car going by, and another one. What's going on? Count 19 of them went by, and I haven't seen that many motor cars in 30 years. So I got to walk down there and see what's going on. So they'd all stopped down there. I guess they had to take a pit stop there at Dos Reyes. And anyway, it's a club from Sacramento that got permission to run on the railroad here from Willis to Eureka. And individuals own their own motor cars. Some of them say they got for $75 or $90, and then they rebuild them. And some of them cost up to $2,500. And they were all pretty good shape, and they came on up. I guess that's the only way you can travel on that track. Now, you'd be nuts to try to run a train over it. If somebody ever tried running a train like Bailey just mentioned there, no way you'd get up much over 10 miles an hour, much less 60. That's unbelievable. But evidently they made it because somebody told me they saw them going by here today. And they're supposed to stay in Eureka tonight. But any of you fellows used to operate on that railroad, you saw it today, it makes you sick. It's sure nothing like it used to be. it's not safe to go over. I wouldn't think anything but maybe a motor car at about 10 miles an hour. So that's about all I had to say. So let somebody else talk.
Thanks, George. John Lau. I worked with John about 51, 52. John was a boomer. John probably worked on almost as many railroads as McDaniels. John, I know he worked on the Santa Fe, and we always used to say anybody that worked on the Santa Fe was a pretty good brakeman, pretty good rail in the old days. A lot of rejects there. John worked as a brakeman for a while, and then he went firing, and he fired in the steam days, and got cut off a few times, and went to work for the post office, and found out that was a better job, and retired how many years ago from the post office?
19 years as of December.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, John, he's got a few things to talk about the old engineers.
Thanks, Joe. Am I talking loud enough? My voice is not as good as it used to be, believe me. I'll start out with number one, Eddie Campbell. We come out of Willits one night on number 4, 45 minutes late. And Eddie, he nibbled here, and he nibbled there, and he nibbled here, and he nibbled there. Didn't exceed the speed limit by too much, but he did exceed the speed limit a little bit. We got to Island Mountain, they put us in the hole for, I don't know, 75, and we sat there for 40 minutes. We were on time when we got to Island Mountain. We were 40 minutes late out of there. Well, when I was working on the Santa Fe, we used to get steam engines once a month on the Golden Gate train, the diesel streamliners. And I watched the firemen, when we come into where they had to take water, they'd be on top of the tank before they ever stopped. Grab the hook, you know, pull the spout around, it was in the tank by the time the train got stopped. So we got over to Kickawaukee, going to take water. So I decided I was going to help Eddie a little bit, so I crawled up on top of the tank, put a spot fire in, and when we stopped, I had the spout around, water going in. Pretty soon Eddie's head comes up over the end of the oil tank, white as a sheet. Oh, there you are. I thought you'd fallen off on the bridge. Well, anyway, we did some more nibbling, and they just leveled up all the track across Beatrice Flat. They come down off the hill, and Eddie said, I wonder how fast this old girl will run across the flat. I said, well, have at it, kid. I'll keep her hot. And away we went. I had the watch on it. Milepost was on my side. We were doing 63 across there. I get home. About 30 minutes later, the phone rings. Ed Jameson. John, how fast did you guys go across Beatrice this morning? Well, I'll be damned if I know, Ed. I just sitting there enjoying the ride. Come on, now, you know how fast you was going. We argued for about 5 minutes, and I wouldn't tell him. So anyway, about 3 weeks later, I ran into Ed down in Willits. And I said, what was all that fuss about Eddie Campbell and me coming across the flat with number 4? Well, he says, John, you know the speed limit was 55 miles an hour, and you was passing everybody up and somebody turns you in. That's number 1. Number 2, Earl Walden. Right after they got the railroad open after the 55 flood, Earl and I caught a drag going to Willits. Then we came back the next day, had about 7 million full orders. We got into Eureka. Ed Jameson's there in the tie-up room. He told Earl, he says, going to deadhead you to Willits tonight to bring Officer Special up tomorrow. I think I got one of the best compliments I ever got from an engineer in my life. Ed says, Earl says, who's going to be my fireman? Well, Eddie says, whoever you get off the board. Earl says, I ain't going. I want to pick my fireman. Well, who do you want? I want John. Why? because he can read and he won't sit over there and go to sleep. So they run me around about half a dozen guys. The deadhead was there back to Willits that night for the officer special the next day. That was, I think, a good compliment from an engineer. Now I'm going to back tell you just one more little story. I could tell them for hours. When I was working on the Santa Fe, if you had a passenger uniform, they used you on troop trains. I had a passenger uniform. I was working out of Fresno. We worked between Bakersfield and Oakland. Got called to deadhead to Bakersfield for troop trains. 2 crews. So we come out of Bakersfield, went to Stockton, delivered them to the Western Pacific. Well, we figured we'd deadhead home on number 24. No way. They had a troop train coming, going to deadhead us back to Bakersfield for a couple more troop trains. Well, I managed to con one of the Pullman porters out of his berth in the smoking room for $2. I was going to go to bed. Well, later on that night, I was sleeping well. Conductor Al Story was shaking me. John, wake up, wake up. I said, hey, we ain't Bakersfield already. No, he says, we're at LeGrand. That's about 40 miles out of Fresno. I said, what's the matter? He says, our fireman went dead on the law. He says, I seen you firing around on those engines every once in a while. I'm a brakeman, see. He says, you can fire, can't you? And I said, well, I can make a stab at it. So I went up and got on the engine. Engineer was a fellow by the name of Joe Frame, and he was a picky guy. Well, the engine had a water pump. He said, I'll handle water on my side. You don't have to worry about the pump. Well, I said, I can handle a pump. Where in the hell did you learn to have a water pump? I said, he used to spell fireman every once in a while. I was working on CNW out of Chicago. Okay, so we started out of LeGrand. We went to Callaway, which is the yard at Fresno. Went to get off the edge, and he says, give me your stamp. You're going on the time slip. So I give him my stamp. He put my name on the time slip. He says, you're going to get paid for this. I'll tell you something else, kid. You can fire for me anytime. I think that was another good compliment from an engineer. Like I say, I could go on for hours. I could tell you tales off the CNW, off the SP, off the Nowhere in particular. Had a little stint on the Wobbly once. And even the Chicago North Shore of Milwaukee as a motorman. But we'll save that for later. Another meeting.
The fireman engineer of the NWP, and I alluded earlier where they started cutting people off, and Don was one of them they cut off, and he went to Southern California, and he came up for this reunion. Danya?
Thanks, Joe. I had the fortune here, was last June, that Dale Ferguson is probably one of the last engineers to retire up here, and we went to his retirement party, and we all had a great time. And I told the story, and for those of you that heard it, talk to your neighbors, and I'm going to do this for those that haven't heard it. But Dale and I we had run around together a lot before we went to work on the railroad. And I went to work on the railroad in 1950, I think it was. And Dale was about 6 months behind me. So I was wiping engines at the time, and had done my apprenticeship, so to speak, in the roundhouse, and went firing. Dale come on as an engine wiper, and so we went down to had to take on oil. Don't laugh, Dale. So Dale says, well, I'll ride down to the spout, and we'll take on some oil. So we cut down there and pulled the dipstick out, and he says, well, how much do you put on here? And I said, oh, give her so many inches, on the old dipstick. And so I climbed up on the tender, and he pulled the spout down, and this hot oil pouring into this tender. we're standing there talking and more or less not paying no attention to what we're doing. And next thing I know, over the tender she went. We ran it over. Dale's got a pair of white cords on. His dad has loaned him a pair of coveralls, and grabs this, we shut it off, the pipe is full of oil, and him and I boost it up, and the oil runs down the front of him, and he wasn't a sticky mess. And he says, if you're helping me, please don't help me anymore. Let me figure this out myself. So I think we finally got Dale cleaned up. We burned his clothes. To this day, his dad never knew what happened to that pair of overalls. So I still don't think he trusts me anymore when I go, I think this is what you ought to do, Dale. He kind of looks at me a little weird. And I got one other little story to tell you about. And at this party, Doe was talking, and we both got up and we said, well, Dale was a good guy. He never got in trouble, and just he was a laid-back guy. But he said, and there's not much we could say about him, but Doe says, if we're talking about Ringtail Graham, hey, we can go for 2.5 hours here. Never do the same thing twice. So this goes back about, it's got to be over 40 years ago. I was firing for a ringtail on the work train at Island Mountain. And we were at Island Mountain on a Saturday morning, and the rule was everybody got up and we got things together and tried to get orders. We probably would have 10 or 12 meets just to get to South Fork. And Frank was going with Grace at that time, and he had a date that night in Eureka. I'm going to go dancing. And we left Island Mountain about 10 o'clock in the morning, and we were taking the equipment, and we were going to go to South Fork and tie up for the weekend. And we got to Kickawaki, and we headed in for a freight. And when they went by, they went on the ground. So Ringtail says, put the fire out and let's go to the caboose. So it was about 4 o'clock that afternoon when they finally got everything back on the main line, and we got going. And if didn't we have the 1772? Yeah. And we were backing up. And we had McDaniels was the brakeman. And we had a whole crew that was going to ride in with us, and they're in that big coach caboose that we had, and they were going to play cards going in. So Frank says, give me a bubble of water, scorch that steam around the edge. Just give me brown steam around the edge because we're going to town. And we flew. We made passenger time backing up with that 1772 with a caboose hop. And the guys in the caboose, it got so rough back there, they thought the table was going to cut them in two, and they all laid down. And we got to Fort Seward, and the night local was in there working, and they were on the main line, and Frank says, jump out, run up there and line the switch to the pass, and we slipped through and we passed them. We couldn't get by them any other way. And we got into South Fork. But the thing of it was, we were backing up with that old Vanderbilt tender, and it got to rocking and rolling. It was like an oscillating headlight. And we made passenger time. I think Jameson had something to say about that or something. He said they OS'd you through at a certain time, and it was a minute later you come rolling in to South Fork. I said, I think Frank had a date. Been out here in Island Mountain too long. I think we had Joppas for a conductor. But anyway, we got in. Frank had his date, and it worked out. But that was one of the greatest train rides I think I've ever had. And I don't think I want to do that again, though. Okay, go.
Don't tell anything on this guy. Okay, I wouldn't miss anything about Don. Well, first off, it's a real pleasure to see all the familiar faces. It's been a few years, but
I'm really pleased to see you, and I'm kind of glad I could be here. I've been spent a fair time in the hospital the last 2 or 3 years, and I don't recommend it. But back to the railroad, back in 1942, I went down and hired out as a student brakeman, and they ever mentioned my nickname a while ago. An old brakeman asked me, he said, "What's your name, kid?" I told him it was HB. That's all the first name I've got. He said, "Well, it's highball from now on," and by golly, it stuck. Yeah, highball from now on. It wasn't the kind you drink. I like those too, but I'm cut off from them. But no, it's really a pleasure. I enjoy this, and I've enjoyed a lot of time with these people. When I retired, I didn't miss the work at all. Sleeping at night without being called for derailment, or the cops asked me for something, or the fire chief because he blocked up the town. I don't miss that, but I certainly miss the people. And I have for 13 years. It's really a pleasure to be here. And Gary Simmons was kind enough to chauffeur me down yesterday from Central Oregon. And it's really nice to be here. I'm not going to get into telling stories. I might tell something on somebody. But I do enjoy being here. It's nice seeing you all. And it's my pleasure, believe me. And the best of luck to all of you. Thank you. Here we go. Sit down, High. I know what it's going to be about. Ken Tuxton has a story.
Yeah, well, this is not going to be too long. This took place on a Saturday night. Jim Battle was the engineer, I was the conductor, and we had a couple of brakemen, I don't remember who they were now. We had a brand new caboose. We just fixed it up for us. And we were going to Carlotta that night. And both brakemen came back to the caboose. And as we were going up the track, we had our coffee sitting in cups on this brand new table. And not a bit of coffee was spilling. Boy, they really done a job on this caboose. And we had one car, caboose, and an engine. And on a Saturday night, and Battle was in a hurry, and I was even in more of a hurry. And I don't know how fast we were going, but we were moving them out. And about the time we were talking about the caboose riding so good, everything went into the fence off of the track. And that put an end to the quick tie-up. So we had to get up to Carlotta and call for the boss. Of course, that was High Fowler and old man Jameson, and they got up there about 2 o'clock in the morning, and Battle says, "Dang, Tux," he says, "what are we going to say?" And I says, "Well, Jim, it's probably the best thing we can do, just don't say anything." And so we were standing there, and Fowler and Jameson come wandering up the track, and just show you what kind of a guy this Fowler is. I heard Fowler tell Jameson, "Damn, Ed," he says, "it's just clearly a case of wide gauge here." Well, old Dick found a lot of wide gauge. Everything that ever happened. Next speaker is Bob Congdon. Bob, about 1950, as I recall, remember seeing Bob. Bob was a fireman, and he would bid night jobs in. Most of them were nights, obviously, so that he could take flying lessons and fly on his day off, or the next day. Bob is a commercial pilot, been a commercial pilot for years. I see Bob about twice a day. He flies the FedEx right now out of Murray down to Oakland and back. But Bob, tell me, he has a story he might tell us about Little Mutt Kelly. And well, what I figured was probably going to be something on his side.
Well, I was going to let everybody guess who I was talking about, but now you know it's Mutt Kelly.
We were coming out of the roundhouse one evening on a yard job. A bunch of SP executives came up. Suits, ties, dressed real nice. They're going to ride the engine. And I was sitting up there in the fireman's seat, and the head brakeman was up there waiting for Mutt. So pretty soon, this little kid walks up in the engine and sits in the seat, grabs a handful of throttle, starts moving it. These SP executives grabbed the brake handle, jumped in the big hole, and says, you know, get this little kid off the crane, we're waiting for the engineer. Well, Mutt just looked at him and says, hey, I'm the engineer. That's it. Anybody that knows Mutt personally knows what I mean.
Yeah, actually, Bob, what I was going to do, I figured what you was going to say, and I wanted to describe Mutt to people that know him. Mutt was about this tall and looked like he was about 14 years old. And he was an engineer, and a very, very good engineer, but there was quite a few people who would say if Mutt was the engineer on the passenger train, the passengers would complain.
Okay, Hi is right. I went over to Dunsmuir, and everybody I worked with over there said the guys that come over from the NWP were always nice to work with, and they knew what they were doing, and we were treated good. But I want to tell you a little story. I see Paul up here, and I see Kenny Tuxton over here. And I was on the extra board, conductor's extra board. I finally got to hold it, and I caught the Samoa job. So we go over there, and we gather up our cars, and you go back to Gannon, and you leave your loads, and you go back to your caboose. You eat, usually either sleep or, well, we never slept. We, or play cards. So it was early, you know, and Paul liked to play cards, and so did Kenny. And so while I'm the conductor and going on back, I thought, well, I'll just have a little fun. So I took the deck and I stacked it. I thought, well, you know, we'll have a little fun. So we get back there, we eat lunchtime, just dying to play cards, you know. And they, come on, you guys, let's play some cards, you know. So I dealt the cards out, 5-card draw. And I dealt, I don't know the order, but it was Paul Schmidt, Kenny Tuxton. He doesn't even remember, but this did happen. And Art Rush was the engineer, and it was me. So I dealt out 5 jacks, 5 queens, 5 kings, or 4, I'm sorry, 4, 4, 4. It's Joker's Wild. I get 5 aces. So I deal them out, and these guys are looking at their 5 cards, and I know what kind of hand they've got. And they're going, whoa, and I'm kind of curious, how many are they going to discard, you know? So Paul says, well, you know, we went around bet. Paul threw in 1. Kenny looks at his, throws in 1, and the betting's getting hot, you know. We're drawing 1, you know. Kenny had a heart. Ken says, you know, you guys, I got a good hand, you know. Paul's going, hey, can I borrow a couple bucks from someone? Here we are sitting with these hands, you know, so they go down, Paul goes, well, I got 4 jacks. Art says, I got 4 queens, and Kenny says, look, I got 4 kings, you know, and I don't feel good about this. I said, well, that's good. I got 5 aces. And not till then did it dawn on them what we said. That's my story. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Anybody else? Geez, I know that, where is Richard? Dick? Dick Bias.
He went home.
Come on up here, Dick. Earlier I alluded to the, and his very good friend, and ours too, little Benny, who also worked with us in those days.
Benny Loville.
Benny Loville, yeah.
What gate?
White gate.
First of all, I want to thank everybody here. It's a pleasure to see all of you here. And I want to thank everyone that worked with me, every department. I really had a pleasure and a great help to help my job. And also I want to thank all those concerned in having this meeting, and I hope we'll make it for next year. I want to thank you all.
Thank you, Dick. We had sort of a time limit here, and I'm not sure what it was. Anyway, Bill will...
Thanks for inviting me, huh?
You already got me about 4 or 5 times.
No, well, you're the one who's put it all on. Been a privilege.
No, everybody. Everybody contributed.
Yeah.
You know, what made the program good was everybody getting out.
Good. Thank you very much.
It couldn't rain so hard. 50 inches in 1 week. Impossible. But it did. During Christmas week of 1964 in Northern California and the Pacific Northwest. Creeks formed and joined the streams. The streams met the rivers. Rivers joined rivers. Creeks, streams, rivers, torrents. A flood of 1,000 torrents in a flood of 1,000 years. Destination, downhill. At dozens of locations, railroads were stopped cold by mudslides, rock slides, and washouts. Track was smashed, and bridges were gone. Answering emergency calls, Morrison Knudsen Company joined the railroads with task forces of construction men and machines throughout the West. On the Union Pacific, on the Western Pacific, on the Southern Pacific, and on the Northwestern Pacific. The Northwestern Pacific roadbed in the redwood country of Northern California was hardest hit. The logs of the redwoods joined the rivers and rushed toward the sea, right over the tracks of the railroad. Rain, mudslides, trees, rocks, and logs raced down the mountains. Logs, culverts, fills, spikes, fish plates, and ties raced down the river. 100 miles of roadbed, millions of dollars of investment, and years of work swept away in a week. A vital railroad lay flat on its back. No lumber trains today. For over 50 years, the Northwestern Pacific, part of the Southern Pacific system, has been a major factor in the economy of the Redwood Empire. So the men of the railroad rolled up their sleeves and took on the job of rebuilding almost a third of their roadbed. They took off their ties, they grabbed their hard hats, and they called on the men of MK. Needed? Construction men, construction machines, hundreds of them. Today, if possible. Tomorrow, for sure. You bet. For sure. Men and machines were dispatched from many MK jobs. Jobs like San Luis Dam in Central California, from a missile base in North Dakota, a construction camp from Yellowtail Dam in Montana. It was Christmas week, but not an MK man complained. They just went to work. The Northwestern Pacific grade follows the Eel River for 106 miles down the canyon. Completed in 1915, the construction of the section through the canyon required 4 years of work. 25 to 30 miles a year was good progress then, in the face of almost impossible barriers. Now, just to gain access, 30 miles of mountain trails have to be built to bring in shovels, trucks, rail cars, construction camps, and dozers. When the machines reached the river, the roadbed started to mend. Number one job, plug the gaps in the line. Helicopters flew men, spare parts, and sometimes even the mail up and down the canyon. The railroad crossed the canyon at Island Mountain. The river swallowed the bridge. 2 truss spans, 2 girders, and a pier. The trusses and girders are a total loss. The rails once ran 84 feet above the river. The floodwaters rose higher than the tunnel. Impossible? No. Downstream, they crested even higher. With access roads opened up, work sites increased by the day, all along the canyon. The new roadbed began emerging out of the wreckage, 100 miles long, winding through the Canyon of the Eel. There's no room here for big earth movers. The battle must be fought with nimble lightweights. They came on the run from Montana, from Idaho, Washington, North Dakota, Southern California. Carloads of machines and convoys of camps headed over the ridge and into the canyon. South Fork is downstream from Island Mountain Bridge. 2 truss spans and 1 pier are downstream now, too. The trestle is for access, to build a new bridge pier out in the river. A bridge to build a bridge. The redwoods and the railroad have been in working partnership for more than 50 years. The rails carried most of the lumber and forest products to market. It's been a good marriage. In fact, a 2-way lifeline. Now the lumber piles up, ready for market. But the 515 doesn't run today. The torrents washed out the job of many a man in the redwoods. Mills operate about half throttle without rail service. Some of the redwoods are the finest sources of clear lumber in all the world. So the lumber must go to market. Trucks helped out. But trucks are no match for 100-car trains rolling down the track and whistling round the bend. The redwood, the trees that live forever, grow only along the Northern California coast. So to get the redwood rolling, first get the railroad running. The new main pier at Island Mountain Bridge will soon help keep it rolling high above the river. Stoutly built to modern standards, it will endure the rumbles of the trains and the rampages of the river. More than 475 MK men, 300 railroad men, and 250 units of construction equipment can round out a fair show of new roadbed in a month. And time is the trainmaster today. In addition to slide removal, new construction involves almost 2.5 million cubic yards of fill material and riprap. Cubic yards are one thing, time is another. The redwoods need a railroad, and the rails need a roadbed. The men of MK build the grade, down the rugged, twisting canyons of the Eel, down the canyon for 100 miles, and knock off only on Sunday. The construction men build the grade, and the railroaders lay the rails. track for the lumber of the redwoods. Tamp the ties and check the alignment. The train's just around the bend. The construction men get out the riprap, and the railroaders ballast the track. And a railroad emerges from chaos. The flood missed no bridges. Cane Rock Bridge caught the onslaught full on and lost a lot of its spine. Down the river, into the woods, and the bridges jump the canyon. With the piers complete, the superstructure goes up. Construction men put up the pier. Steel men put up the span. And the bridges hurdle the canyon. South Fork is the last bridge in the canyon. The main pier is a water job out in the middle of the river. Sheet piles go down and a cofferdam holds out the current. Heavy structural members within the pier will support most of the weight of the span. First, a cofferdam, then steel, concrete, and finally a pier, the last along the line. The three new bridges will help sustain the lumber economy of the Redwood Empire. The railroad men rolled up their sleeves. The construction men rolled up their machines. And a new roadbed came down the canyon. On June 16, 1965, the Northwestern Pacific came back into service, only 177 days after beginning the most monumental repair job in railroad history. A job to remember. 177 days, 100 miles of new roadbed with ballast, ties, rails, bridges, and one ceremonial golden spike. Construction men and railroad men, they get things done. Together, they wrote a new timetable for a new era in the partnership of the rails and the redwoods.
Northwestern California, a land of giant redwoods, rushing waters, and natural wealth. A territory that until the late 1800s stood untapped and inaccessible. As prospecting and the lumber industry expanded, a more reliable and efficient means of transportation was needed to move these goods to market. Out of this need, over 60 short-line railroads sprouted up throughout the area. Both the Southern Pacific and Santa Fe wanted control of these lines and the access they provided into this rich empire. And they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars surveying their own individual routes. After months of discussion, it became apparent that by consolidating their efforts, they could develop a plan that would finally give Northwestern California a stable rail link from San Francisco to the seaport of Eureka. The Golden Spike was driven on October 23, 1914, at Cane Rock, deep in the Eel River Canyon. In 1929, Southern Pacific bought out the interests of the Santa Fe, and the Northwestern Pacific became a wholly owned subsidiary of the SP. For the next 60 years, this vital link of ties and rails has provided an outlet for lumber and other products to the rest of the world. But the economy and Mother Nature were not kind to the railroad. The Depression and World War II, coupled with floods and unstable canyons and mountainsides, proved to be its undoing. Through the dedication of many people, the line still lives under the ownership of the Southern Pacific and the newly formed Eureka Southern. On November 1st, 1984, the Eureka Southern acquired the line from Outlet Creek, just north of Willits, to Eureka, with rights to enter the Willits Yard. The SP still operates the line from Willits to the Shellville Junction at the northern end of San Francisco Bay, where connection is made for Roseville and Points East. Joining these two lines is the California Western, running from Willits to Fort Bragg. These three lines make the quiet town of Willits an active railroad hub in this remote area of Northern California. To celebrate 75 years of railroading in the territory, several special Golden Spike events were staged during the fall of 1989. As a part of these events, California Western ran a special train from Willits to North Spur and back. This run was handled by Mikado No. 45, built in 1924, and a rare low-nose RS-11 Alco helper. Number 45 took on water, and maintenance chores were performed while waiting for a meeting with a special coming up grade from Fort Bragg. This gave everyone a close-up look at number 45 and a chance to ask questions.
It is a safety chain to keep that truck from going anywhere if it falls on the, off the track, and keep it right under the car.
Mark, we can pull up to that mark if you want. It doesn't make any difference. We're going to have to pull this by anyway. So why don't you just pull up to a mark if you have one, and we'll stop there.
After a series of maneuvers at the Y, number 45 continued on to Fort Bragg, while Alco number 64 returned home to Willits. Our trip will start on October 21st, 1989 at Willits, on board the North Coast Daylight. Willits is located approximately 150 miles north of San Francisco at an elevation of 1,365 feet. On this run, 2 private rail cars were added to the consist. point are former Conrail GP38s number 7667 and number 7821, built in 1969 by the Electromotive Division of General Motors. These locomotives are now Eureka Southern numbers 30 and 31. A high railer precedes each train on its 140-mile run through the Eel River to check on the integrity of the right-of-way and grease the many tight curves. With the roadbed in less than mainline condition, operating speeds range from 15 to 20 miles per hour to only 40 in the best sections. Due to the train schedule, several runs were videotaped to produce this program. Therefore, the consist may vary in several sequences. Once the high ball is given, our train follows Highway 101 and Outlet Creek to Farley, where we meet the Eel River. During this time, we will cross and recross the river 12 times. Derailments caused by poor mainline conditions are marked by the remains of freight cars along the right-of-way. Due to the high cost and the rugged terrain, these wrecks are usually not removed. At Dos Rios, the line parts company with the highway and moves into the rugged Eel River Canyon. Several wrecked freight cars can be seen in the river bottom, attesting to the severe flooding that occurs during the rainy season. Tunnel 21 is the signal for the dining car crew to begin preparations for the luncheon service. The kitchen and dining room crew are all professionals in their own right and all share one common interest, the joy of railroading.
When the train is in the station, we encourage constipation. When the train is going, so should you.
Even the boss gets into the act, cleaning up before the meal service.
Just what I wanted.
You don't get any.
Thanks a lot.
At milepost 180 is Spy Rock. The Indian tribes used Spy Rock as a vantage point to guard the Eel River Canyon. Our train follows the western edge of the Round Valley Indian Reservation for many miles. At Island Mountain, we meet up with the local southbound freight. The crews exchange places so everyone can end up at their respective homes at the end of the run. Resuming our journey, we cross the Island Mountain Bridge and enter the 4,300-foot tunnel, the longest on the line. During the devastating floods of 1964, this bridge was washed downstream and the tunnel filled with logs and debris. These aerial survey films, courtesy of the Southern Pacific, show the devastation from the winter floods. It was reported that a wall of debris pushing against the bridge spans caused them to fall into the raging waters.
Now we're back to Island Mountain. You notice the footing on the pier. The pier tipped over. These were deck plate trusses. I noticed the debris was in them. Our division engineer was there that night that they went out, and we calculated there was 84 feet of water in this stream at that point, 10 feet from going through the tunnel. That little girder in there, that's all that was left of a 576-foot bridge.
After extensive aerial surveys, the final count was over 100 miles of total washout and damages ranging into the millions of dollars. Yet bold engineering and dedication got the line back in operation in only 177 days, despite continuing adverse weather and the problems of remoteness and the rugged terrain. Using the original golden spike from the 1914 ceremonies, the line was reopened on June 16, 1965, with a ceremony at South Fork. Although the Eel River Canyon has not seen rain for many months, the hillsides are in endless motion, moving slowly toward the river bottom. This slippage requires constant maintenance, as can be seen in the newly filled area approaching Cane Rock. Mr. C.E. Neal of Southern Pacific tells of the problems at Cane Rock Bridge during the 1964 flood.
We're approaching the Cane Rock Bridge, which is our longest bridge in the Eel River Canyon. It's the second crossing of the Eel River. On one end we lost 2 girders, and on the other end we lost 3. The trusses, I think, well, I know they're all right. They're going to be a tremendous job cleaning the dirt off from them. And if you'll notice one of the piers on this end, I think it's the 3rd pier out. If you look real sharp, you'll see that the top of it has been knocked off. About 7 feet of it's been knocked off. Right there, see it? It's the one just off of the truss. And then see the debris that's in the trusses? That stuff reaches clear to the top of the truss. Now, I don't want to indicate to you that the water went clear over the top of that bridge, because it didn't. But it forced us, after the logs got in there, it forced them right up to the top of it. Here's where on this end we lost 3.
Cane Rock is the site of the driving of the original Golden Spike, signifying the completion of the Northwestern Pacific Railroad. The languid pace of the journey allows passengers to just relax and watch the scenery roll by, or reminisce about good times past.
I bet we go by Chile and another redwood country just about the time we do something.
We got to see that bluff.
Well, it should be on this side of the turn.
Yeah.
Oh, you got all kinds of goodies here.
Oh, yeah. If you want a speeder or a private car or something like that, I can get that for you, too.
Well, how about that?
You name it, we'll try and locate it.
Yeah.
Trouble than it's worth.
Milepost 209 is the small village of Alder Point. Like many of the other towns in the area, Alder Point was supported by a lumber mill, but now has only a general store, gas station, and a restaurant. The recently filled and realigned roadbed attests to the problem of unstable conditions along the river's edge. Fort Seward is the next point of note. During the Indian Wars in the 1860s, Fort Seward was an established outpost for the Army, but was soon abandoned. One of the few Northwestern Pacific stations still stands as a testament to the rail pioneers who forged this line through the rugged countryside. Milepost 232 signals McCann. Here we pick up speed as we head for South Fork and the end of the Eel River Canyon. At South Fork, the middle and south forks of the Eel join in the shadow of the giant redwoods of Humboldt Redwoods State Park. And we cross the river on a 3-span truss bridge.
That's about a half a mile of track here is gone. You can see the silt beds behind the track, and the water was probably about 20 feet deep over here. This is the South Fork Bridge, the east abutment, which is all right, but we lost 2 spans. I want you to notice the logs and the brush and the trees that are in these spans still remaining. That's a locomotive tender laying there. This is a big log jam. The water, we know, was 21 and a half feet deep over this area. That's a tank. There's some outfit cars in here. You'll see them. Old coaches, houses. There's the crane. The water was 10 feet deep over that little quarry and shovel of ours. That's some cars in there, flat cars. There's another trailer laying on its side. One of our trucks is over right beyond there. Every house, there's some ship cars in there. Somebody asked me whether they were king or queen size. Oh, I couldn't tell you, but they're there. We lost 92 cars in this thing.
We now skirt the town of Scotia, a company town run by the Pacific Lumber Company. The Northwestern Pacific and now the Eureka Southern have been, over the years, instrumental in providing transportation for finished wood products from this and other mills in the region. Transportation has almost wiped out profits for rail shipments, and with the tenuous nature of the right-of-way, future rail business is in doubt. One of the most dangerous and slowest sections of the run is a 2.5-mile stretch known as the Scotia Bluffs. Here the track sits on a narrow ledge at the base of near vertical cliffs. The high railer crew is especially cautious in this area. Maintenance has always been a problem due to the soft nature of the soil, which can cause a slide almost without warning. Bulldozers and a steam shovel are stationed nearby for immediate use. While our train continues toward Eureka, other events were taking place as part of this 75th anniversary celebration. At Fort Humboldt State Park, the Northern Counties Logging Interpretive Association put on a display of working donkey engines and other related equipment. Rides were given on the fully restored engine Falk. This 10-ton locomotive was built in San Francisco in 1882 and was typical of the motive power that worked the woods and the mills in the area. Another open house was scheduled at Blue Lake, north of Eureka, with a visit to the Arcata and Mad River Railroad. The depot has been turned into a museum, holding many artifacts from the heyday of logging and railroading in the area. The tour also included the end of the track at Corbell and a visit to Glendale and the large collection of logging and railroad equipment on display and under restoration. On October 22, 1989, a special run was made to Fort Seward for a recreation of the Golden Spike driving ceremony. Many people associated with the railroad, past and present, and railroad historians attended the event, which culminated with the driving of the Golden Spike for a third time.
Park Museum in Eureka, and I'm the master of ceremonies. As it turned out, Dave Dorn delegated me on his way out of town last night. But I'd like to welcome you to Fort Seward, to the third gold spike ceremony that's been held on this line in the last 75 years. 75 years ago tomorrow, we had a ceremony at Cane Rock with a genuine gold spike that you saw on display at the museum yesterday and also at the Eureka Inn last night. That spike was used 11 miles that away at Cane Rock. 24 years ago, this past June in 1965, there was a second gold spike ceremony at Southport, that away, 21 miles, not too far away. What about the gold spike? Solid gold again, 9.6 troy ounces of solid gold. I'd just like to make a few introductions. I'd like to introduce John Kozak, the general manager at Eureka Southern. John Kozak. Oh God, I'm president of a railroad. I've never done this before. Hold it on top of the rail first.
Services of the people.
I'll be going down ahead of the train on the high rollers to put the sign up on the post at Cane Rock. And then you'll see it going by and where it should be.
Back on our train, we paced the highway for a few miles, passing through the towns of Fortuna and Fernbridge. This highway bridge, built in 1911, has withstood all the floods that destroyed many of the supposedly strong steel bridges on the railroad. Arriving in Eureka, our journey comes to an end. We have seen many sights and had a glimpse at some of the history and scenic beauty of this unusual area. No matter what happens in the future, the people of Eureka and all the towns down the line to Willis will always remember the sound of what has become to many the only mode of transportation to the outside world.